What if the silence you've been feeling isn't distance, but someone gathering the courage to finally speak? Aries, there's a presence moving toward you now. Not confident, not polished, but real. You may sense it before you hear it. A hesitation in their energy, a truth shaking in their voice. This isn't about excuses. This isn't about confusion. This is someone choosing honesty over their ego. At last. If this resonates, leave egg in the comments and trust what you already know, because what they're about to say could change the way you see the past. And what comes next is bigger than you think. Aries, stay with me for a moment. There's a reason this feeling didn't arrive loudly. It didn't knock on the door. It didn't announce itself. It came in quietly, like the air changing in a room before a storm, like that pause right before someone says your name. Because what's happening now isn't about urgency. It's about truth finally finding enough space to breathe. You see, when someone has been silent for a long time, it's rarely because they had nothing to say. More often, it's because they were fighting themselves, their pride, their fear, the version of them that believed staying quiet was safer than admitting they might lose you. And Aries, I want you to notice something important here. This moment is not rushed. It's not messy. It's not impulsive. It's careful. That's how you know it's real. You might sense them hesitating at the edge of your energy, like someone standing in the doorway, hand on the frame, taking one last breath before stepping in. They don't arrive perfectly put together. They don't arrive confident in every word, but they arrive present. And presence matters more than performance. You've always been able to feel when someone is showing up halfway. Your body knew before your mind caught up. That tightness in your chest, that quiet disappointment you never fully named. This feels different. This feels like someone who understands that silence has a cost. And that cost was you slowly pulling your warmth back. There's a tenderness here that might surprise you. Not weakness, not guilt. Awareness, the kind that comes after long nights of replaying conversations. After realizing that what they dismissed was actually what mattered most. You didn't imagine this shift. You didn't force it. And you didn't wait in vain. You simply stayed true to yourself. And that truth became a mirror they could no longer avoid. So, if part of you feels calm instead of excited, that's okay. That's wisdom. This moment isn't asking you to rush forward. It's asking you to stay grounded, to listen without shrinking, to hear what's offered without abandoning yourself. Because what's unfolding now is not about going backward. It's about clarity finally catching up with reality. You may notice their energy feels slower than before. More deliberate, less scattered. That's not hesitation, that's respect. They're choosing words carefully now because they understand something they didn't before. Once spoken, the truth cannot be taken back. And Aries, here's the quiet power in all of this. You don't need to guide them. You don't need to explain. You don't need to prepare a response. Your role is simply to remain where you are, centered, whole, unmoved from your worth. Let the moment come to you. Let the silence finish breaking on its own. Because just ahead, there's a realization waiting to be spoken out loud. A sentence that carries weight. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's honest. And when it's finally said, you'll feel it land. Not like a shock, but like confirmation. And that is where the story truly deepens. Aries, listen closely now. What's unfolding here doesn't feel rushed. It doesn't feel dramatic. It feels intentional. This time, they're not arriving with explanations lined up like shields. They're not rehearsing stories to protect themselves. They're not scanning your face to see how much they can get away with saying. They're standing there, bare. And you can feel the difference immediately in the pauses, in the way their words slow down, as if each sentence has weight, and they're careful not to drop it. This is not the kind of honesty that tries to impress. It's the kind that trembles a little, the kind that knows once spoken, there is no hiding behind it anymore. You may notice how quiet your own body becomes in this moment, not tense, not defensive, just still, because your intuition recognizes something rare. Someone is finally choosing truth over being right. And Aries, that matters more to you than grand gestures ever could. You've always been able to sense when someone is talking around the truth, when words are used as fog instead of clarity. It used to exhaust you, that subtle feeling of having to read between lines that shouldn't have existed. But now, there are no extra lines. Their voice may not be steady, but their intention is. There's no bargaining energy here, No testing the waters. They're not asking for a reaction. They're not pushing for forgiveness. They're not trying to speed up your response. They're simply letting the truth land where it needs to land. And that takes courage. Real courage. Not the loud kind Aries is often known for, but the quiet kind. The kind that looks inward and admits where things went wrong. You might feel something soften in you as you listen, not because you're letting your guard down, but because you no longer have to hold it up. You're not being asked to convince them of anything anymore. They already see it. That's why their words feel deliberate now. Measured, clean. There's no backtracking in their tone. No maybe, no someday. No excuses hiding behind timing. Just presence. And here's something important. I want you to notice, Aries. You're not leaning forward. You're not chasing the moment. You're grounded. That's growth. At some point in your past, you might have burned yourself trying to pull honesty out of people before they were ready to give it. You learned the hard way that fire cannot force awareness. It can only illuminate it. And now, awareness is arriving on its own. This is why the moment feels heavier. Not heavier in a painful way, but heavier with meaning. Because when someone speaks like this, they're not just communicating. They're taking responsibility for the space between you. In Aries, responsibility is a language you respect. So you don't interrupt. You don't fill the silence. You allow the words to breathe. There's wisdom in that pause. A sacred kind of stillness where truth settles into place. You may feel a quiet realization begin to rise in you. Not excitement, not relief. Clarity. The kind that doesn't rush you forward or pull you backward. It simply asks you to stay present for what's about to be acknowledged next. Because just beneath these careful words, there's a deeper admission forming. One that reshapes how the past is seen. And as the air shifts again, you'll sense it coming. Not as a surprise, but as something that was always meant to be said once the ego finally stepped aside. And that's where the next layer begins. Aries. There is a moment like this in every real awakening. It does not arrive with drama. It arrives with discomfort. You can almost feel it in the space between words now. That subtle heaviness, that quiet pause where something finally breaks open. This is where they stop pretending they did not know. Where the truth steps forward without needing proof. Because deep down, they have always known. They knew when they chose their own direction, without checking if you were still walking beside them. They knew when your presence became something they reached for, only when it was convenient. They knew when their warmth came and went, leaving you to guess which version of them would show up. And Aries, here's the part that hurts. They did not misunderstand you. They did not miss the signs. They simply chose themselves too often, not out of cruelty, out of immaturity. That realization does not come gently. It comes late at night, in quiet rooms. When distractions are gone and excuses no longer work, you might sense that weight in their voice now. Not guilt that asks for comfort, but awareness that stands alone. This is the kind of reckoning that changes a person from the inside. Because once you see how your choices slowly push something sacred away, you cannot unsee it. They are beginning to understand that what drifted was not the connection. It was trust. It was consistency. It was the feeling of being chosen without conditions. And Aries, I want you to hear this clearly. You did not ask for too much. You asked for balance. You asked to be met where you stood, to matter in moments that were not convenient, to feel included instead of postponed. What they gave instead was fragments, pieces of attention, half promises, moments followed by absence. And now they see how that pattern created distance no apology could fix. This is not a soft realization. It stings. Because it forces them to admit that the loss was not inevitable. It was built choice by choice. There is something deeply human happening here. Someone is learning that love is not something you return to when everything else is done. It is something you protect while life is happening. You may feel a quiet sadness rise in you as this truth surfaces. Not because you want them to hurt, but because you carried this understanding long before they did. That is the loneliness you survived, and still, you stayed kind. Still, you stayed honest. Still, you did not harden your heart into something unrecognizable. That matters. Right now, you are not being asked to relive the past. You are being invited to witness accountability without having to demand it. That is powerful. Notice how you are listening differently now. Not searching for validation, not waiting to be proven right, simply present. Because when someone finally admits where they failed you, the story shifts. not toward reconciliation or separation, but toward truth, and truth brings clarity. As this realization settles in them, something else begins to form beneath it, a new awareness, one that is less about what they lost and more about who you have always been. You can feel it approaching, like a light moving closer through fog. What comes next is not about blame, it is about recognition. And as the air changes again, you will sense the focus turning gently toward you. That is where the next layer opens. Aries. This is where the light starts to change, not suddenly, not dramatically. But in that quiet way, dawn arrives before the sun is even visible. Because once they admit where they went wrong, their eyes begin to adjust. And what they see now is you. Not the version they minimized, not the version they assumed would always stay, but the truth of who you have been all along. They see how you move through moments with restraint, how you chose kindness when leaving would have been easier, how you stayed present without demanding to be chased. You did not raise your voice to be heard. You did not tighten your grip to feel secure. You did not turn love into a negotiation. And that is what unsettles them the most, because they realize something very quietly now. You were never trying to control the outcome. You were trying to protect the connection. There is a difference. They start replaying memories differently, noticing details they once overlooked. The way you waited without pressure, the way you adjusted your pace so they could keep up, the way you offered understanding without losing yourself. Aries, you gave patience, without self-betrayal. And that is rare. What weighs on them now is not regret alone, it is comparison. They sense that kind of presence cannot be easily replaced. That meeting someone halfway requires maturity on both sides. And they were not always there. You never demanded perfection. You asked for consistency. You asked for honesty. You asked for effort that matched intention. And you asked without noise. That is what makes this realization cut deeper. Because they see that you were not asking too much. You were asking for what should have been natural. They notice how safe your energy felt, how being with you did not require performance, how you allowed space without disappearing. You were steady, and steadiness is often invisible until it is gone. There is a softness in their awareness now, not weakness, respect. They begin to understand that real strength is not dominance, it is reliability. It is presence that does not fluctuate with mood or convenience. And Aries, here is where your own energy shifts. You are no longer waiting to be recognized. You are witnessing recognition arrive on its own. That changes how power moves in this moment. You are calm because you already know who you are. You do not need their realization to confirm it, but you can feel the truth landing anyway. And there is dignity in that. This is not about winning. It is about being seen without having to explain yourself. They feel the weight of that now. The understanding that you are offering something grown, something rooted, something real. And whether or not paths align again is no longer the point. Because the recognition itself is the shift. You might notice a gentle warmth in your chest. Not excitement, not hope. Validation without attachment. That is healing. As this awareness settles in them, another layer begins to surface. One that moves beyond how they treated you and into how you shaped them. They are starting to realize that knowing you changed their understanding of what love actually requires. And that realization does not stop here. It deepens. The focus is about to turn inward for them in a way it never has before. And as it does, you will feel the story open again. Not louder, just deeper. Stay with the feeling. The next truth is already forming. Aries. This is the part they never knew how to handle. Not your fire, not your strength, but your clarity. Because when you spoke, you didn't speak to win. You spoke to name what was real, and that was confronting in a way they were not prepared for. You weren't loud about it. You weren't dramatic. You didn't corner them with demands. You simply said what you felt, what you needed, what you could no longer ignore. And that kind of honesty can feel threatening to someone who is still negotiating with themselves. When you asked for clearer words, it wasn't pressure, it was alignment. When you wanted presence instead of distance, it wasn't control, it was connection. When you spoke about commitment, it wasn't urgency, it was respect for time, for energy, for truth. But to them back then, it felt like a spotlight. And they weren't ready to stand in it. So they braced, they defended, they told themselves you were asking too much, because it was easier than admitting they weren't yet giving enough. What they didn't know how to say then is what they are beginning to understand now. You were never trying to rush them. You were trying to meet them in reality. That's why your words stayed with them. Even when they acted like they brushed them off, even when they changed the subject, even when they pulled away. Truth has a way of echoing, especially when it lands clean. They replay your voice differently now, not with resistance, but with curiosity. They realize you weren't challenging them out of impatience. You were challenging the illusion they were hiding behind. The idea that time alone would fix what presence was avoiding. That realization is uncomfortable because it asks a hard question. What if you were right and they just weren't ready to admit it? Aries, you didn't expose them. You reflected them. And reflection can feel harsh when someone has not yet accepted what they see. But here is the quiet shift happening beneath the surface. They are no longer reacting to your truth. They are learning from it. They see now that your words weren't ultimatums. They were invitations to show up, to be real, to stop postponing what mattered. You didn't need more. You needed consistency. You didn't need promises. You needed presence. And the reason they cannot forget what you said is because it was never emotional noise. It was grounded, centered, unavoidable. That's why it still lives in them. And as you listen now, you might feel something soften inside you. Not because you feel vindicated, but because you feel understood without having to explain yourself again. That is a different kind of peace. You are not here to convince anyone anymore. You are here because your truth stood on its own. And as they finally see that, another layer begins to take shape, one that moves beyond what you asked for and into what they feared losing. The awareness is shifting again. The energy is turning inward for them. Stay with the feeling. What comes next is not about disagreement. It is about the weight of absence. And that is where the story continues to open. Aries, this is where fear finally tells the truth. Not the loud kind, not panic, but the quiet realization that arrives when someone understands what is truly at stake. They begin to sense a future where you are no longer there, not as a threat, not as punishment, just as a natural outcome of time moving forward. And that thought changes everything, because they can imagine you choosing differently now. Waking up lighter, laughing without waiting for a response that never comes, offering your warmth to someone who does not hesitate to receive it. That image stays with them. It is not jealousy. It is grief in advance. They understand that if you step forward without them, there will be no way to rewrite the past, no second draft, no quiet undoing. This is the fear that strips away denial, the fear of knowing that growth does not pause for anyone. They feel the weight of all the moments they delayed, all the chances they assumed would still be there later, and later suddenly feels very far away. You see, Aries, they are not afraid of losing control. They are afraid of losing access to your steadiness, to the way you listened without interrupting, to the way your presence softened rooms without trying. They realized that what you offered was not ordinary. It was grounding. It was safe. It was real. And the idea of you giving that energy to someone else feels unbearable because it highlights a truth they can no longer ignore. They were trusted with something precious, and they did not always handle it with care. This fear does not make them weak. It makes them aware that love is not guaranteed by history, that connection does not survive on intention alone, that what is not chosen repeatedly eventually chooses to leave. They begin to understand that you were never standing still. You were growing quietly, learning, strengthening. And now the distance they feel is not between you and them. It is between who they were and who they wish they had been. Aries, notice how this moment feels in you. You are not tense. You are not bracing. You are steady. That is because this fear belongs to them, not to you. You have already done the work of letting go of outcomes, of trusting yourself enough to move forward if needed, of knowing that love should not require you to shrink. That is why their realization arrives now, because you stopped chasing certainty, and certainty stopped running. There is something deeply human happening here. Someone is learning that presence cannot be postponed, that warmth does not wait forever, that genuine connection asks to be honored in real time. They are sitting with the understanding that what hurts most is not the thought of you leaving. It is the awareness that they almost let you go without ever fully seeing you. And that awareness changes the way they look at you now. It sharpens their focus. It slows their words. It brings gravity to what they are about to express. As this fear settles, it transforms, not into desperation, but into clarity. They are standing at the edge of a sentence they have never allowed themselves to speak before, one that carries responsibility instead of defense. You can feel it approaching, like a breath drawn deeper than usual, like the moment before someone admits the truth out loud. Stay present, Aries. You do not need to lean in. You do not need to prepare. The silence is about to change shape, and what comes next is not about what they want. It is about what they are finally ready to acknowledge. Aries, this is the moment everything has been moving toward. Not the conversation, not the timing, the sentence. You can feel it before it's spoken. That subtle shift in the air. The way their breath changes, like someone standing at the edge of a truth they can no longer carry alone. This is not a dramatic confession. It is quieter than that, heavier, because some words are not hard to say. They are hard to survive once you do. They have turned this sentence over in their mind more times than you know. In traffic, in the middle of the night, in moments when your absence felt louder than any argument ever did. They kept it buried because it required something they were not ready to give: humility. But now, that resistance has worn thin. Fear did its work. Awareness did its work. And what remains is honesty with no place left to hide. When they finally say it, you may notice how simple it sounds. I should have listened to you. No explanation follows, no justification, no defense wrapped around it, just the truth, standing on its own. Aries, understand the weight of that moment. For someone who once needed to be right, this is surrender. Not surrender to you, but to reality. They are acknowledging that your clarity was not pressure, it was foresight. That your voice was not demanding, it was grounded. They see now that you were not trying to win an argument. You were trying to protect something real, and this is where the energy shifts again. Because when someone admits this, they are not asking you to go back. They are recognizing that you stood in truth long before they were brave enough to join you there. That matters. You might feel something unexpected in your body as they speak. Not triumph, not relief. Stillness. The kind that comes when you realize you were never crazy, never asking for too much, never misreading the situation. You were early, that is all. And being early can feel lonely. It can feel misunderstood. It can make you question yourself when everyone else is still asleep. But Aries, the sun always catches up. This admission is not a victory lap. It is closure of a different kind, the kind that does not depend on what happens next. Because you do not need them to agree with you anymore. You already agreed with yourself. Their words simply confirm what your intuition carried quietly all along. Notice how you are breathing now, deeper, slower. That is your nervous system recognizing safety. Not in the outcome, but in the truth. You are not being pulled backward by this moment. You are being anchored more firmly where you stand. And that is powerful. They may feel exposed after saying it, vulnerable, smaller in a way that is unfamiliar. But you do not need to take care of that. You do not need to soften your truth to make theirs easier. Your presence is enough. As the sentence settles between you, it does not close the story. It opens a new awareness. One where roles are no longer confused. One where responsibility is finally placed where it belongs. And as the silence returns, it feels different now. Not heavy, not tense, clear. Stay with that clarity, Aries. Because what comes next is not about what they said. It is about what you choose to do with the peace that followed. And that is where the final layer begins to reveal itself. Aries. Let this be the place where everything settles. Not because a decision has been made, not because a door has closed or reopened, but because you finally understand something deep and unshakable about yourself. This moment is not asking you to return, and it is not asking you to wait. It is simply standing here with you, quietly confirming what your intuition has known all along. You were never confused. You were never overthinking. You were never asking for something unreasonable. You were listening to that subtle tightening in your chest, listening to the pauses that felt longer than they should have, listening to the moments where effort did not match intention. You noticed, you named it, and even when it was uncomfortable, you stayed honest with yourself. That is strength. You see, Aries' intuition is not loud. It does not argue. It does not beg to be believed. It waits. And now, reality has caught up to it. There is a quiet dignity in this realization. Not the kind that stands on a podium, but the kind that stands firmly in its own ground. You do not need to prove what you saw. You do not need to explain how you felt. You do not need to convince anyone that your experience was real. The truth has a way of walking back on its own. And when it does not arrive with apology alone. It arrives with recognition. That recognition is not something you chase anymore. It meets you where you are. You may notice how different your energy feels now. There is no urgency in it. No need to push. No need to pull. Just presence. This is where healing actually happens. Not in the answers you receive, but in the peace you keep. You allowed yourself to see clearly without becoming bitter. You allowed yourself to speak without becoming hardened. You allowed yourself to care without losing your center. That matters more than any outcome. And whatever happens next, you are no longer walking into it uncertain of your own compass. You trust yourself now. Not because someone finally agreed with you, but because you never abandoned your inner knowing. That is the lesson you carry forward. Let them speak if they need to. Let them sit with what they have realized. You do not need to manage it. You do not need to respond immediately. You do not need to offer resolution. Your role is not to carry clarity for anyone else anymore. Your role is to remain aligned with yourself. As this chapter softens and begins to close, something else quietly opens. A sense of spaciousness, a lighter breath, a deeper confidence in your own timing. You are not behind. You are not late. You are exactly where you are meant to be. And Aries, as you step forward from this moment, do it without rushing. Do it without regret. Do it without carrying what no longer belongs to you. The truth has returned to its rightful place, and so has your power. Stay with that feeling, because this is not the end of the story. It is the moment you stop doubting your role in it. And from here, whatever you choose next will be chosen from clarity. Not fear, not hope, but knowing. Trust yourself, Aries. Aries. Before you go, let me leave you with this. What just unfolded wasn't about them finally speaking. It was about you finally hearing yourself. Sometimes the universe doesn't bring clarity by giving us answers. It brings clarity by allowing the truth to walk back to us on its own feet. And when it does, you realize something powerful. You were never meant to chase understanding. You were meant to stand in it. If this message reached you tonight, it's not because you needed reassurance. It's because you're stepping into a version of yourself that no longer doubts their inner voice. That's Aries energy at its highest. Quiet confidence, grounded fire, strength that doesn't need to prove anything. If something in this story touched your heart, leave a comment below. Even just one word. Let this space know you were here. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and stay close. Because this journey doesn't stop here. The next message is already forming, and it carries a different kind of light. One that meets you exactly where you're going next. Until then, Aries, trust yourself. You always have. And remember, when the truth comes back to you, it's because you were brave enough to walk forward first. I'll see you in the next message.